Our next unit of study is going to be about Chang Lee's novel, Adjust Your Life. So in this novel, we have a character named Doc Hata, and he is living in the United States. He's a retired medic for the Imperial Army, and he has been in his past in America, he runs this medical supply store. So he's a very unassuming, kind of ordinary man, at least on the surface. And then behind, in his mind, in his memories, we find that his identity is a lot more complex. We learn about some of the secrets, the memories that he's sort of not fully dealt with in a real sort of visceral sense. And he's sort of haunted by his past. So before we get more into this character of Doc Hata, let's briefly talk about Chang Lee. So Chang Lee is a Korean American. So he was born in South Korea in 1965 and then emigrated to the United States. And a lot of his literature deals with this kind of duality of displacement and the idea of being American and yet sort of not feeling like you're fully accepted within that culture. So you're still viewed as kind of a foreigner, even though you were fully a citizen of America. So this context of race will be the challenges of racism for somebody who is visually other than the hegemonic white American that we think of. So some of the challenges of racism will be evident in his novel. He's also written novels, The Native Speaker in 1995, and the novel we're studying is Adjust Your Life, which came out in 1999. And his writing deals with themes around discrimination, exclusion, the struggles of being accepted in America, and the legacy of the past. And this is the key theme of Adjust Your Life that I want to focus on for this course. So how does the past influence the present? How can we become stuck in the past? And how do traumatic events of the past continue to haunt our lives in the present? So these are some of the questions or ideas that Chang Lee will pose in his narrative. And our historical context, we're dealing with the character Doc Hata, who was a medic during World War II, serving for the Imperial Japanese Army. And his identity is complicated by the fact that he is not full-blood Japanese. He is, in fact, a Korean man who was adopted by a Japanese family. So his identity already is somewhat diluted or confused or complicated by the fact that he is a Korean man who sort of identifies himself as Japanese and was adopted by a Japanese family, yet he is not fully sort of assimilated into the Japanese culture, or not fully accepted, I should say. So there is an element of sort of alienation and confusion or complicated ideas about race and identity. And we will sort of see how this character unfolds over the course of the novel. He starts out a very sort of a simple, straightforward, almost an ordinary man, retired man living out his life in this quaint American town. But as the story unfolds, we find out all the secrets, the buried traumas that are part of Doc Hata's past life in the army. Okay, so that's just where we're going to get started. I'm going to sort of talk about the novel in two halves. So the first couple of lectures will just focus on the first half of the novel, so up to chapters 1 through 8. And then it is a long novel, so make sure that you're giving yourself enough time to read the novel and keep up with the lectures as well. So there are three sort of distinct settings in the novel. We have the quaint little town of Bedley Run, and this is where Doc Hata lives. He's now a retired store owner, so he owned a medical supply store. And now he's just retired from that and living out his sort of retirement, living in his beautiful home in Bedley Run. Very sort of quiet life. Everybody sort of seems to know him, and he's kind of a fixture in Bedley Run. So everywhere he goes, people will greet him. He's Doc Hata. That's how he's known. And he's sort of very well liked within this town. Another setting would be Ebbington, and this is the less wealthy, more working class neighborhood outside of Bedley Run, and this is where his daughter Sunny works. So we'll find that out a little later, but Ebbington is sort of a contrast to Bedley Run in the fact that it's a little bit more run down, a little bit less economically upscale, and these two sort of towns represent kind of the decline of the economic viability of America at this time. And then we have Burma during World War II. So this is the third setting. So in all the flashback scenes when Hata is remembering his service for the military, the Imperial Army, he is thinking back to his service and the experiences that he had as a young man in Burma. So the plot structure of the novel is a little complex, so you do have to sort of keep timelines in check or organized in your mind. So we have an inset story, a framing story, and another framing story. So they take place sort of almost fluidly as Hata kind of remembers the past, and all those sort of memories of his past sort of flow or blur into his present. So things that happened in the past seem to still be haunting him as he is approaching sort of the later stages of his life. Now that he's retired and sort of facing the end period, the golden period of his life, he is sort of trying to still, he's unresolved about all these things that have occurred in his past. So the framing story is Hata in the present. So this is him as a retired man, living in Bedley Run. You know, he'll swim in the mornings. It's a very sort of leisurely, restful kind of life, low-key. In the present, though, he will eventually reunite with his estranged daughter, Sunny, who is now an adult with a son of her own. And they've been estranged, so they haven't spoken in, I think, over 10 years within the course of the story or of the timeline. And he will eventually reunite with her over the course of the present events of the novel. He'll also go back in time and remember Sunny when she was a young girl. He'll have memories of adopting her and then through her adolescence, as she as they grow apart emotionally, they'll become more and more distant and estranged from one another. She'll go through a lot of um, rebellion in her adolescence, rebelling against her father, and cause him a lot of heartache and worry as she starts rebelling against his rules. And then we also have the inset story, and this is sort of the central focus for our class, which is about war narratives. So the inset story is all Hata's memories about his service for the Imperial Japanese Army. So this takes place again in 19 in the 1940s while he was serving for the Japanese Army as a medic. So they were stationed in Burma, and he recalls what happened to him as a young man while he was serving for the Army. So this will be an integral part of the sort of traumatic events that that continue to haunt him in the present of the story. So it's a little confusing, but I think once you figure out that he is thinking back, these are sort of flashbacks in memory to the past, and if you can kind of keep these three kind of storylines or time frames in your mind while you're reading, it's a good way to sort of think about the structure of the narrative. The story is told from the perspective of Doc Hata. So we have all of the events of the story told through his eyes, and it becomes sort of evident that he sees his past through a kind of biased opinion. So in a sense, he's not really a reliable narrator because it's all very subjective, and the way that he remembers things is purely sort of his own worldview. So if it was written from, say, his daughter's point of view, Sunny's point of view, we probably would have a very different story versus how we are given the story, which is through Doc Hata's eyes. So he will keep things sort of mysterious, and the story sort of unravels, and we see some events in his past that he's not proud of, things that he keeps hidden and buried in the back of his mind. So he is a very sort of repressed character. The events, the traumatic events that he has experienced are sort of pushed way back in the recesses of his mind, and we get them in glimpses, in flashbacks, in memories that seem to continually haunt this now elderly man who's living out his days. So on the surface, he is very stoic and seems very well adjusted, but below the surface, a lot is going on in his mind, and things can't stay buried, right? So we have this almost Freudian return of the repressed in Hata's character. So we get flashbacks to his previous lives, sort of as his military service and his relationship with his daughter. All of these things seem unresolved, unfinished, and are continually sort of having an effect on his present life. So the protagonist and narrator, Franklin Hata, or Doc Hata as he is referred to by Bedley Run community, is an elderly Korean-born, but he identifies himself as a Japanese man. So he seems very innocuous, very sort of normal, well-adjusted on the surface, but below the surface we get a shadowed past, right? So he is a complicated man with a traumatic history, and it continues to haunt him even in the present. So we'll uncover some of those haunting events.